Hey, what's up guys? Garden here, coming guys with a deck profile update on my Dragonic Overlord deck. So set 4s came out recently, and I thought I'd do an update for this deck. Also, just as a premise here, but I decided with Dragon Empire, I'm going to cut back a little bit on the amount of decks that I'm doing, and just focus on particular ones that I'm enjoying more. So obviously with Dragonic Overlord, I feel a bit more comfortable with this deck. I did really like the Overdress deck, but I didn't really like putting more expense into that deck. And then with decks like Bab Sagra coming out, as well as like Eugene on the side, it was just a bit too much to keep up with. To then also, keep up with Keta Sanctuary as well. And then we also have other products coming out like the V Clan collection. It was a bit too much. And then also I need to start saving for like set 5 as well with like MLB and Blaster Blade and that. So yeah, had to make some cutbacks, but Dragonic Overlord was the one that I decided to continue with, and yeah, it got a fair bit of support. Nothing too crazy, but it got some nice generic pieces that I can use from both set 3 and set 4. So this is kind of like a combination update with set 4 overall. So yeah, let's go into the deck. So first for the right line, we of course have Undo here, just to keep the Dragonic Overlord theme going. We then have Bar, which will allow us to counterblast to search for a grade 1 when we ride the Nahalem on top of it for a counterblast, so that's not too bad at all. We can go search for a perfect guard if need be. Then we of course have the Nahalem grade 2 for the ride with his skill. When you ride your Overlord unit on top of him, so it works for any Overlord. So I can only imagine this will also still work with the end when that comes out in set 5, but we're still waiting for reveals for that. But yeah, you get to call him out from the soul when you ride your Overlord on top of him, which is pretty cool since he has a Regard skill, which is pretty helpful, which you can Soul Blast, and then your Vanguard and him get 5k power basically. So yeah, and then we of course have Dragonic Overlord, the big guy himself. So Dragonic Overlord, of course, when he attacks a Regard, your opponent can't call cards from their hand to the Guardian Circle, but do bear in mind with set 4, there was a lot of new Blitz Orders that came out that most of the decks got. And I will say that I got something wrong recently during my opening video of set 4. So this Keta Sanctuary order, you can only use this when the Blast of Vanguard is being attacked. So the retire element of this one on the rear guard that I thought messed up Dragonic Overlord's attacking skill, turns out it doesn't work out that way. So yeah, apologies about that. But yeah, just bear in mind some of the Blitz orders in set 4, they only work when the Vanguard's being attacked. And yeah, for the most part, Overlord will have a decent enough time when eating rear guards to, of course, activate his on-hit skill, which is when he hits anything. So you can still attack the Vanguard with this to pressure the on-hit effect. But when he hits, you can counterblast to discard a card and then restand him with Drive -1. Very good, especially when you see critical triggers. You can just, apply them to him if you're attacking the Vanguard and then they don't guard it. Then you can restand him with the crits on him and then attack again. So pretty good, very good pressure card, and it's very Dragonic Overlord. So yeah, that is the right line. So that is what we're doing with that. So for the grade 3s, we're doing the 3 additional copies of Dragonic Overlord, since we do want to be Persona riding, of course, since it's very powerful. And yeah, that extra 10k to the front row will go a long way. So definitely be playing more copies of him. Then the other grade 3, I'm doing 2 copies of the new Blitz Order. So this is an example of a Blitz Order that's a little bit more flexible. So this card says, if your Vanguard is Dragonic Overlord, you choose one of your units and it gets 20,000 power until the end of the battle. So not too bad actually. 20k shield basically is a pretty solid amount. And with the high power threshold that set 4 has brought to a lot of the decks, I felt like going a little bit more defensive with the deck was definitely a good call. But like with orders anyway, you can only use 1 per turn, so I didn't want to go too crazy with these. Also with this, if you see it in the early game, since this card is only online on the grade 3 turn after, you can always just discard this with the right deck, so that's not too bad. But yeah, I felt like trying out the new Dragonic Overlord order, and yeah, it's been fine so far. So I don't mind playing 2 copies of it for now. You could cut it to 1, but I feel like 2 is quite nice for the defensive aspect of the card. So for the rest of the deck, we have the grade 2s. We have the 3 additional copies of Nahalem, of course. I quite like this just because he's the only card really that puts the soul to good use. You Soul Blast 1, and then of course the Vanguard and him get 5k, so you can make your Overlord have a decent amount of power to be pressuring with. especially when it comes to like the Vanguard attack. The extra 5k could make guarding a little bit more awkward for the opponent. So I do like playing the 3 extra copies for the 4 in total. We then have the 4 copies of Berserk Dragon, which is really, really nice. This is basically our spot removal for the deck, the form of retire that we have. So when it attacks, if you have a Vanguard with Overlord in the card name, it gets 5k power. But then you can also pay the cost of Counterblast 1 to choose one of your opponent's grade 2 or less rear guards and retire it. So very, very good, very useful, and like I said, it gives you a bit of control with the deck to control the opponent's field a little bit. So 4 copies of Berserk Dragon. Alright, so that's all of the normal stuff that we've seen besides from like the Blitz Order. So a new card that we got from set 3, which was 4 copies of Ethan. Ethan I really, really like because it's kind of like an upgraded Gojo. So basically with this, when your Vanguard attack hits, you can retire him to then draw a card and countercharge. So one thing that Gojo didn't do was draw a card. So with this, it replenishes itself. So you can actually use the Ethan first by, attacking with him first, and then use the Overlord to then attack something, to then retire this, and then get the draw. Now you do need to be a bit careful, since if you initiate a rearguard attack first, your opponent could use that as an opportunity to like intercept with their rearguard, so that you don't have a rearguard for Dragonic Overlord to eat. But at that point, I feel like that's fine, because you can then pressure the Dragonic Overlord attack to their Vanguard, and then they have to worry about the on-hit in that aspect. So I don't mind that, especially when Ethan is providing us a draw for his retire as well, whilst at the same time getting that counter charge, which is what Gojo was giving us in the first place. So yeah, I quite like this card. It's a very nice upgrade for the Overlord deck overall. One element you might have noticed with this actually was that he is a 9k, so he can't always hit everything, but on a Persona Ride turn, he'll be 19 on his own, which is okay. And facilitating a booster in this deck isn't actually too far-fetched. We actually quite have a good plethora of grade 1s that we can boost him with, and still make somewhat decent numbers to be attacking with. It's not going to be perfect, but it's at least going to be able to allow him to attack something with a decent enough number for some pressure. So yeah. So 4 copies of Ethan. So for the grade 1s, we are doing the 4 copies of the Perfect Guard, of course, since we do want to be, PGing when necessary. 1 card PG is also nice as well. So, of course, we're going to be sticking with these, which are pretty much a staple. So 4 copies of PGs. Then another 4 of that I'm playing, which is a card I really, really like in this deck, which is 4 copies of Madoka. So Madoka, this came out in set 3, I believe. Yeah, set 3. This is actually pretty cool because he has a skill which says on Rear or Guardian Circle, if your opponent has 4 or more cards if your opponent's drop zone has 4 or more cards, he gets 2,000 power and 5k shield. So he becomes a 10k booster or attacker or a 10k guard, which is pretty nice. And 4 cards in the drop zone, you might think, might not always happen. Actually, it does, because your opponent's discarding cards for their ride deck. So they'll always have at least 3, and then, asking them to get rid of 1 extra card for this to be live is actually not too far-fetched. So yeah, for the most part, this will be a 10k booster or attacker and a 10k shield. But then, if your opponent has 8 or more cards in the drop zone, he gets an additional 5k shield. So this will become a 15k shield later in the game, which is really, really good. Again, it just bumps up that defensive value in this deck that I really, really like. So yeah, good booster, good attacker, good defender, just a good generic card overall, and I really, really like it in this deck. So 4 copies of him. Alright, and then another card that we're playing, just for like beat stick and boosting potential, we have 3 extra copies of Bar. So of course, when your Vanguard attack hits, he gets 5k power. You can actually line this up pretty easily so that he becomes a 13k attacker, which is actually not too bad. Persona Ride turn, he'll be 23 on his own. And then if you have the 10k boosters with like Madoka, yeah, you can actually facilitate pretty good number columns with him. So I don't mind playing the 3 extra copies of Bar. And then also, depending on the turn play that goes first, you could actually facilitate a little bit of early game rush sometimes, which is actually not too bad. So yeah, 3 copies of Bar has been working out fine. And then I'm doing 2 copies of the Tenjisted. Tenjisted is quite nice just because it helps us search out our Dragonic Overlords for the Persona Ride. I don't like relying this on too much, because a secure way of activating this is to basically boost your Dragonic Overlord, since you can kind of secure the on-hit by attacking a rear guard, so that's not too bad. But it's kind of like a last resort You know, because sometimes you might actually just draw into the Persona Ride copy, or even more after that. So it's not necessarily needed all the time, but outside of that, you can just use this as a nice on-hit pressure 8k booster. And then if you do have any Overlords left in the deck, you can just search them. So that's not too bad. So I do want to play this still, but I downed it to 2 copies instead. And then I did talk a little bit about this earlier, and I talked it down, but I do like playing the one Gojo still, just because with Ethan, like I said, when he's in the rear guard attacking, sometimes your opponent can kind of play around it. But with the Gojo, sometimes you can actually put this behind the van to just secure the on hit and then get that counter charge. And I like it as a one-off, just as like a tech choice. You can replace this for like another Tenjestead if you want to, but I quite like the run one copy of this. It's kind of like running 5 copies of Ethan that way, but of course I value Ethan a little bit higher than Gojo since Ethan can actually draw you a card. So yeah, Gojo though I still feel like is okay, but it's not necessary, so you can cut that if you want to for something else. So yeah, that is it for the grade 1s. So we'll go through the grade 0s. So of course we have the big overtrigger, the Dragonic Overlord, the overtrigger. Yeah, restand the Vanguard. Don't really need to explain why we're playing these, but yeah, we're playing that. Next we are playing the 4 copies of the set 3 crit, which we picked up. The skill is not necessarily too important. Soul is only used by the Nahalem skill for the power. But he's a 4k booster, which could come up, especially when boosting your Ethan sometimes. And because you can go into the Soul afterwards to give 2k to something, you could give 2k to your Dragonic Overlord, since you could make it so that your Overlord becomes 15k, and then an 8k booster like the Tenjestead, for example, that could make a pretty good magic number column. So there are times where this critical can actually come up in particular scenarios, but it's not by any means too important. And yeah, you might as well just play it anyway because it's the one with the skill. But we are also playing the other 4 crit as well to maximize on our 8 crit limit, since that is a thing in Overdress. But yeah, going with the dragon crit since it's Dragonic Overlord, right? So gotta have those dragons to represent. Then for the other triggers, I'm doing the 3 draw trigger. This came out in set 4. This is the new one that gets 5k shield as long as your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater. I quite like these just because 10k shield just gives us a bit more defense to work with if necessary. But also draws are just nice in Dragonic Overlord, since you can just ditch these for like the ride deck or for Dragonic Overlord's cost very easily. And also having the draws in the deck makes it more likely that we'll draw into pieces that we want to see, like those additional copies of Dragonic Overlord for the Persona Ride. So I quite like these at 3. I feel like it works pretty well in the deck. And I didn't feel like I wanted to play front triggers because I have quite a good amount of defense anyway, with like the Blitz Order and also the Madoka as well. Where is he? Here he is. So yeah, because I've got these as like defensive cards, I felt like the defense aspect of the front trigger wasn't really necessary, but you can get away with the front sometimes, but I feel like draws are just better, just because you can get that draw and replenish your hand and see pieces, basically. Alright, and then for the last trigger, we're playing the 4 dragon trigger, just to keep that dragon theme going, and yeah, it's a Babby Dinosaur Dragon, so yeah, very, very cute. So yeah, that is it for the deck. Like I said, Dragonic Overlord, it's a deck that I decided to stick with Dragon Empire, just because I quite like the feel of this deck. It's got that aggressive nature that I just like playing with, and in terms of the other Dragon Empire decks, the Overdress deck I quite liked with Nirvana, but I just didn't want to keep up with it, and with Keta Sanctuary being like my main clan, well, my main nation, I kind of wanted to cut back a little bit on the other nations, so yeah, I decided just to stick with Dragonic Overlord for now. And yeah, that's the updated list. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope I explained things well enough for you. And I did get my last couple of copies of cards that I needed for my Bastion Prime deck. So do stay tuned to the channel. So I will be updating my Bastion deck with Bastion Prime very soon. And yeah, I'll update that when I've got the deck ready. So yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. And I will catch you guys in the next video. This is Guardian 205 signing out.